Hey, YouTube world, we are back. Hope you are having a fantabulous day so far. We finally have some breaking news to react to, and it may not have captured the mindset of a lot of people, but this is shocking news coming in today. 13 University of Texas players tested positive for the coronavirus. This comes 10 days after the first group of student athletes returned to campus in Austin. We already have 13 confirmed cases of the coronavirus. 10 more players are placed in quarantine, seeing if they will develop symptoms here in the next few days. And really the 10-day period in advance is really just the exact period for a metastasizing of the symptoms inside the body. So what we're seeing at the University of Texas is a really big deal. When you're talking about now nearly half of the team's players who are at school have tested positive in the span of 1 to 2 weeks, really 10 days. But again, if they weren't doing weekly tests for the players, they wouldn't have found this until they were all symptomatic and likely spread it to more players on the team. So this isn't surprising, is this part. College football is in a position where they are stepping out of the shadows here. They're bringing athletes back, sometimes quietly, sometimes very publicly. In the case of Oklahoma State and Alabama and Clemson, very publicly, players are returning to practices and voluntary workouts, etc. But in the case of someone like Texas, we knew that in these places where there's still high COVID rates, we weren't going to have social distancing protocols be followed. I mean, you'd have to be naive to assume that these college campuses with 18 to 21-year-old kids and football coaches that are not taking COVID as seriously, especially Tom Herman, Mike Gundy, Nick Saban to a degree, even though it's not Nick Saban there, it is the strength and conditioning coaches, guys that really don't take COVID seriously, which is not surprising. It's surprising that over half the players tested positive, because that means you're in direct contact with these people, spreading it person to person to person, because honestly, one person shows up with COVID, or one person contracts it in the metastasizing period. Each of those people spread it to 2 more people. So then 3 people have COVID. They spread it to 2 more people each. Now all of a sudden you have 9 people that have COVID, and then that 9 spreads it to another 2 each. Now 27 people are diagnosed with COVID. So that's the problem with this whole system right now. And then 27 is really equal, this is the last part, 27 is equal to the players that have either tested positive or are pushed into quarantine. The number's at 24 right now. So what we're seeing is that they are passing it on to each other over and over and over again, which means that there are no safety protocols going on here, and this is an awful idea, and this is the pressure that exists on college sports to reclaim the money that they really need, because for schools like Texas and Oklahoma State, Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, we've seen positive tests all across the country. In those places, the system will fund itself as long as you play a football season. So there is this massive increased pressure to come back and play a football season, and I just don't know whether the players understand just how much leverage they have. Because you can be eager to go back and play football again, but recognize you hold the leverage. Just because you're eager, you can play your hand a little bit. If you're a college athlete, you don't have to put yourself in this position. You don't have to go back to camp, and recognize that even if you do, don't give it away as a negotiating ploy with your head coach to get some legitimate change going on at your campus. And the biggest issue is that players at Texas show up, get the money for the program, while at the same time, 50% of the players that showed up diagnosed with COVID. And the other thing that's focused in on, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this tomorrow on the podcast, with Von Miller and the cases behind you need to be careful because we don't know what it means, like, in terms of symptoms and after effects. Sure, I mean, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, I get that. When you have symptoms afterwards and you recover from COVID, there are still after effects of the damage that it has taken on your body and your lungs that we don't recognize yet. Which is why you cannot expose an entire team of football players to COVID-19 in the span of like 10 days. 50% of the team has gotten it. This is an awful idea. Everything that's going on right now, I don't mean to be the bearer of bad news. That is not my intention at all. But this is an awful idea if you can't stop 50% of your players from testing positive in 10 days. If you cannot prevent that, what's going to happen once the season rolls around? Because again, sure, you may not be able to get it again twice, and sure, you may have the antibodies, but the solution is not get every single player on the team infected so that you can develop herd immunity. That's not safe. It may be safe because nobody's going to die from it, but there's an off chance if you expose thousands of college athletes to COVID-19 so that they cannot be paid, put their health and their long-term, they are absorbing all the risk in both health-wise, both with COVID and the fact that football may be an even worse health risk than COVID. They are absorbing all the risk and they're not even able to prevent 50% of the team from not testing positive in 10 bleeping days. Today is the 18th. They showed up on the 8th and half the team tested positive for COVID. Herd immunity becomes achieved when about 70% of people achieve COVID. That means they didn't do shit to save these kids, or at least do some kind of social distancing protocol, because there is no possible way you can get 50%. You have the testing, but the testing tells you when the kids get a positive test. That's not the safety protocol. That's not enough. Just running tests to find out who tests positive, and then once you test positive, put you off to the side. It's one of the dumbest things I've heard in this entire time where we talk about bringing back sports and NBA 113-page protocols, and John Harbaugh saying the NFL's mandates are impossible it's impossible to meet the NFL's standards for social distancing while being in a locker room. All of this is now underlined by just how bad this has been in college football. Because if 13 players are testing positive and 11 have to go into quarantine, that's insane. And it's not like this is months into it and COVID just got into the locker room for the first time. This is arriving for the first time. This is the first opportunity and the first trial. Over 50% of your people test positive. It shows this is an awful idea. And it happened at Oklahoma State with 5 players testing positive, Alabama with 6. This is craziness. And the fact that this is going to continue happening is just underlying the fact that we don't know what we're doing. Nobody knows what we're doing, but all that's motivating the University of Texas, Tom Herman, the administrators who Tom Herman reports to, and the NCAA at large is we gotta get the money. It's the same reason the NBA is trying to undergo their season, same reason Major League Baseball is trying to undergo their season, same reason all these sports are playing is that it's all about the money. And the issue with that is that now college kids are being exposed at ridiculous rates to COVID in the first test run, because it takes 7 to 14 days for COVID to end up, I forgot, metastasizing doesn't sound right, but basically to set up in your system. So everything that we're seeing is just utter insanity at this point, and you gotta shut it down. Like, the University of Houston shut down with like 7 positive tests. You gotta shut it down at Texas. Like, send everybody back home. Don't bring them back into the university. Don't bring them back into the weight rooms. Don't bring them back into the meeting rooms. Just, it's over, okay? You tried, you failed. Do not pass this off like this was something that we anticipated. That's not it. You did not anticipate this was going to happen, and if you say that, you are misrepresenting the students who you swore to protect, and you are misrepresenting the university at whole, and you're misrepresenting the fan base who is getting their information from you. You are misinforming the public if you say this is normal. This is not normal. Half the team should not be testing positive in 10 days. The first opportunity it was to see a positive test. All these guys tested negative when they showed up. Now, all of them are testing positive. That is the overwhelming issue, is that that's not... The kids could be doing a better job, yes, but most of their time is spent at football practice and football meetings and weight rooms. This is unnecessary, and it shows right now you've got to shut it down. No ifs, ands, or buts. You tried, and it failed. It's failed at other places. It has not failed in such a catastrophic way as it just did at the University of Texas.